Welcome to One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. I'm your host, Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Pernell, the exponential success coach. Today, I have a guest that I have been, I have to say giddy. Like I never use that word, but I've been really excited to have her on. Amazing woman who has such a wonderful, bizarre, twisted, fantastic, amazing story of how she got to where she is, and she's not done yet, right? So this is, it's really great. I have with me Morrison from Warren Law Group. Morrison is usually you think of attorneys as what can they offer? Like, yeah, attorneys. Here's a human who happens to be an attorney.
Right.
So with that, Morrison, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Wayne. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here.
Yes.
All right. So you weren't always an attorney.
Right.
And you weren't always an attorney dealing with cannabis.
Right.
So I love to wind back the clock. And where I love to start is, it sounds really strange, and yet, there's a little psychologist in me that pushes through every so often. And I'm not going back to, so let's begin with your mother and your father. We won't start there. I do want to know, like, where did you grow up? I don't know that. Where'd you grow up? Because that kind of stuff influences the way you think.
Yes.
You have been in relationships. You've come out of relationships. That's the human side of this. You've been in litigation. You've come out of that. You are now helping people in a very specific niche, which is currently in its own turmoil, trying to define itself. So there's a lot to pack into our time together. So could you back up and go, like, where did you grow up? You weren't always Morrison, right?
Yeah, well, I've always been Morrison. I was born Morrison. That's my last name. So I've always been Morrison.
Okay.
But I was born in Montreal, Quebec.
Okay.
To a single mother, a Jamaican mother, Pansy. It was an amazing lady who I just lost in 2013. Rest in peace. Give thanks. But she came from Jamaica, and I was her first child born here. I mean here as in North America, although the West Indies is also North America, but I was born in Canada, away from the West Indies. So I was born in Montreal and then raised out in Kitchener, Ontario, outside of Toronto. Some people are referring it more to as Grand River. That kind of harkens back to what the native people called the area. So I often use Grand River out in Ontario. Give a shout out to anyone who's listening from Ontario.
And let me just pause for a second, because people from the United States have a really geographic centric sense of North America.
Yeah.
Right. So when you say North America, it's like, oh, well, of course, that's the United States. It's like, no. There's this whole gigantic region, maybe even a country above us that's that's part of North America. So I just wanted to point out,
yes, the northern half of North America.
Exactly.
That's where I was born. But I call myself a Jamaican. I'm a Jamaican Canadian.
That's awesome.
Yes.
I haven't heard that before. That's good.
And then at the age of 16, I moved to New York City with my mom. She was having trouble finding work as an LPN, a licensed practical nurse out there in Canada. So she moved to New York City, Jamaica, Queens. She was always all about Jamaica. And that was where I spent my teenage years, half of my teenage years, and then pretty much all of my adult life until recently. So I was pretty much always in Jamaica, Queens.
Okay.
New York. Yeah.
So you went to school there?
Yeah.
At 16, that means you came in almost like as a sophomore in high
Right,
school.
right. Junior high, it was quite a culture shock, complete change from what
Yeah.
I was used to growing up kind of in the suburbs out in Canada, and then coming into the inner city in New York. It was very different.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it is different, and I would imagine that culturally there's a difference also,
Mhm.
just in terms of like how to fit in, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
talk a little bit about that, because at 16 you start to have interests that are like,
Yeah.
life could be interesting, life could bring me down this path,
Right.
and you start to also individuate in a way where you go, you know what, I am me.
Yeah.
And at the same time, at 16, it's like, I'm me, but I really want to belong, but I'm me,
Yes.
but I want to belong. So
Right.
if you could wind back the clock a little bit for yourself, and just like, most people don't think about
Uh-huh.
when they're 16. And so again, like, as I ask you, I'm asking our audience, like, think about the
Yeah.
decisions you were making when you were 16 years old, right? So what does
Right.
that mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it comes back for, I have a lot of fresh memories in my mind, just kind of bringing it up now and thinking about it. And I did very much go through a culture shock. I I felt like I grew up in a completely different culture. I can kind of give an example. I remember I wasn't like super athletic as a teen. I was really into volleyball and I played a little bit of soccer. But whenever I did play sports, I would be very competitive, but just kind of just joking and gesturing with people, be like, "Hey, I got the ball from you," and ha ha ha. And in Canada, we'd all just kind of laugh about it. And I would just kick the ball around, and and I thought it was just fun. And I remember my early on at in Jamaica, Queens, going to high school out there and kind of playing my first game of soccer with the girls and doing the same thing, like gesturing with the the girls I was playing, my my students and mates or friends, and they weren't really friends. I didn't really know them at the time. I was just getting to know the new people there. And my classmates, I should say, that's what I was looking for.
Sure.
And the principal saw us on the field playing, and she saw like the other girls kind of getting upset, and she called me to the side after. This was out in Jamaica, Queens, and she said to me, I know like in Canada, this is how you play around and you joke with the girls and you're just playing, but here we don't do that. Like you can really lose your life and these girls are getting really upset. Like just don't play like that. And it was just like, and it was really shocking to me because I always, it was a more serious, it was a very serious environment, and it taught me a lot. That was a big culture change for me. And it showed
I'm
me
just
like,
joking. Yeah, too.
I
You
was
could
just
lose your
joking, but
life over
here,
a joke like
it's a
that.
different
So
culture.
yeah,
And even though I was from Canada, which wasn't that far away, and a lot of times we feel that it's the same culture that runs through all of North America, especially for Canada and the US, that showed me that there was a real difference. And I did feel a little bit alienated, like it was hard for me to fit in. I felt like even though for me, racially at least, because in Canada I was always very much a minority. I was, always one of the few people of color and few Black people in classes. But out in the U.S., in New York, at least in Jamaica, I wasn't anymore feeling like I was in the minority, particularly where I was in school. So I fit in terms of how I looked, but then I felt like personality-wise, I didn't,
yeah.
And so that was a real challenge to me. So I could really understand what you're saying about like, yeah, at 16, it was like a big change for me. And, it's hard to always fit in. But it's good to not fit in because I feel like that's kind of how I figured out who I am and found who I was as a unique person and individual.
That's a huge statement, right? That's like, and what's funny is that adults, each of us, I think, we're still looking for, how do we become our own person? So
Yes.
it's huge because you're demonstrating it every day. You're demonstrating it every day, and
Yes.
I hope I am too.
Yeah.
But I think your story is one of, it's kind of dramatic, like how you demonstrated that, like, you are your own person. So
Right. Right.
um so talk about two paths. Like, at
Mm.
some point you decided, Law is a really good way to go. At some point, you decided about your relationships, and I want to explore both. I think that, both of those are so fascinating, and to a degree they're intertwined for you.
Yes.
It's one of the reasons I met you at an event. I neglected to say this in the introduction. I met you at an event in New York City, and pretty much fell in love with you at the time. It was just like,
fell in love with you
my
too.
God, this right, it's like, I just have to be around you, like,
right.
it's so good. So
Yes.
so it was one of the reasons, like, wow, I want you to share. I want to share you, and I want you to share with the audience, like, how did you become, like, yes, you've always been Morrison, it's your last name,
right?
And yet that is sort of like your one word moniker. That's like who you are.
Yes.
I call you something else, though.
Yes, you do. You have my secret name.
That's right.
Nickname.
It's a code
special
name.
Wayne nickname.
Exactly. Which is cool. So talk about, if you don't mind, talk about the path. Talk about relationships, and then talk about like it's weird. I knew in 7th grade, for example, at 12 years old, I knew I wanted to do something in psychology. I knew it. It was my calling. It was like, I just knew that was the path. I didn't know where it would take me. How could I? But I knew that it was like, I must connect with humans. I must lift humans. I must, talk about potential and get people to really listen to their own whispers of desire. Like, that was deep in me, even at 12 years old. And I started to pay attention to that. At what point did you know, like, who you were becoming?
I mean, I still don't know.
That's awesome. What a great answer, right? It's like, that's an answer of permission.
Right.
And it really is. It's like, just be,
I can explain how I got here. I don't know where I'm going to be going or who I'm becoming. But I have high hopes. I have high hopes for who I
have a retreat to help you and others figure that out. So exponentialsuccesssummit.com.
Right. I looked that up. It looks awesome. That'd be great to be a part of it.
It'd be great to have you there. All right. So back to you.
Yes, back to me. So, I mean, for me, I've always been a writer, and I've always been very focused on truth and justice. I grew up in the church, Pentecostal church. My mom was a fundamental Christian. We go to church like 3-4 times a week. And I was very intrigued by the Bible and religion, and I guess just the word and reading. And people would always tell me in church and outside of church, even in school, that I should be a lawyer. So I've heard that my whole life. I feel like ever since I was like at least 7 or 8, I've been hearing, you should be a lawyer. You should be a lawyer. So and when I went to high school, and particularly when I transferred here in Jamaica, I went to Hillcrest High School there. They told me the same thing, like, you should be a lawyer, do pre-law. So that was what I ended up doing, and going to law school. I ended up going to law school, but on the way, I met a wonderful man, my ex-husband. Now, at the time, he was, he still is a lovely person, and got married and had my daughter right before going to law school. So I went to college first.
Where'd you go?
Queens College, College to the University of New York. Shout out to all the alum of Queens College. It's a great school, a great education for not a tremendous amount of money. And I just hope that we can maintain that here in the city. It's such a wonderful privilege to be able to be a part of that. And so I went to Queens College, met my husband, and I got pregnant before going to law school. So it was a real decision for us to make in terms of whether I should, what was I going to do? And found out I had just gotten into law school, and I decided to go ahead and go to law school. My mother very much encouraged it. She felt like this was a huge accomplishment for our family. I was the first to go to college for all of our family. So she was just, she felt like it was really important for me to do that. And she and my husband at the time decided to take on much of the burden of and the pleasure as well of raising my daughter. And I was there too, but it was, for the first couple of years, it was very difficult. And I ended up just, studying a lot and working really hard in law school. And
which law school did you go to?
So I initially got into University of Pennsylvania, and then I transferred over to Columbia Law School. So I ended up graduating from Columbia. And it was tough, but I learned a tremendous amount and decided to pursue financial success, because we've always been like working class or poor and always just struggling for money. And I guess I grew up thinking that money was the solution to everything. Like if we just had money, our lives would be so much better. So I just totally focused on making money. And it was at the sacrifice of a great deal, like a sacrifice of, spending time with my daughter, and the sacrifice of so much in my life. And a friend of mine was just asking me recently, I think it was just 2 days ago, like, oh, what are you trying to do in life? And what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I just like to make some money. Because I'm like, I'd like to just make some more money. And, as I thought about, she's like, I have to tell more of my story, because I ended up, not making choices that weren't so focused on just making money. But she was like, I don't believe you're just trying to make money, because you had so many opportunities to make money and you turn it, you don't always focus on that. So I was like thinking that that's true. Because money, I felt, for me, kind of took on, how do I say it, was everything almost. Like I had to really focus, and it felt like it was almost like a god. It was almost like a god, And so anyway, I went to law school, graduated, decided to focus on going into these large law firms in New York City. And they were really great to me. I mean, I learned a great deal. I had a great deal of exposure. I learned, about making business, pleasing clients, doing great work. And I really appreciated the experience I had there at the law firms. However, it was a tremendous amount of work, and I wasn't able to spend the time that I really wanted to with my daughter, and ended up going in-house, working with a major client at my firm, doing more of the trade finance and commodities work. While I was in the law firms, I was doing more of restructuring, reorganization, Chapter 11s, bankruptcies, because I was always wanting to make sure that I was gainfully employed, whether there was a downturn or an upturn. So during the booms, I would do the more financing and representing creditors, secured creditors, unsecured creditors, and just doing origination work and securitizations. And then during the bankruptcy or downtimes, during recessions, I would do more of the bankruptcy work. And I went in-house and was very much enjoying it. The hours were great. I really enjoyed the team I was working with. And I would always spend a great deal of time focusing on my health and my body. And I would spend a lot of time running each day and jogging and watching what I was eating. And so while one day I was at the gym and I was watching, the screen that was on at the time while I was on the treadmill, and I saw flashed across the screen that I don't remember the name of the executive. It was an executive from Apple was leaving to join the cannabis industry and marijuana. And this was before it was legal. That was back in like 2014, 2013. And I was absolutely flabbergasted. I could not believe it. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing because, as I said, I grew up in a fundamental Christian family, although my mother was Jamaican. She never endorsed using any kind of drugs, particularly not cannabis or any of that. But she would tell me stories about how it was used for healing and, back in Jamaica in teas and things of that nature. So she did have that understanding of it, but at the same time, she did not encourage its use in any way, shape, or form. So I was very surprised by that. And I just wanted to explore and learn more about it. And I joined a new angel investing group in the cannabis space, ArcView, and started to learn about the industry and see, how I was going to plug in. And I decided that what I wanted to do was start something for people like myself who just wanted to learn more about the plant, and see how it can help with healing others. And I decided to move to Denver, Colorado, and I opened up a lounge out there, a sanctuary, which focused on the spiritual aspects of cannabis and the healing aspects of cannabis, but also just having fun, because that's very important to me too. So we did a bunch of different things. We would do, yoga and meditation and goddess workshops and parties and all kinds of different things.
All right. So something more than just, I just decided, I saw this thing on TV while I was on a treadmill, and then I decided that I was going to invest, and then I decided I was going to move from New York City to Denver, Colorado to open a lounge. Like, that's just, there's a paragraph or two missing, Morrison.
Yes.
So
yes. So let me back up.
Yeah.
Yes, there's quite a bit missing. There's my whole personal life that was missing in that whole story.
This is where it intertwines. Is this it?
Yes, this is where it intertwines.
Please, this is fabulous. Okay, because I didn't know the timing. I didn't know this is awesome.
Yes,
right.
This is where it intertwined. This is where my whole transition took place. It was quite harrowing, but exciting and good for me. So in 2013, right before cannabis started being legal for recreational use. It was legal for medical use in a few states before then, but they were just starting to make it legal for recreational use in Colorado. My mother had passed away, from various ailments, and it was really, I don't even know how to describe it, because I was very close to my mother,
Yeah.
and she was my hero, and it was hard for me to accept her mortality. And as I thought about it more and more, I was thinking that it was evidence to me of my own mortality, and that was also hard to accept and deal with. And right when cannabis was becoming legal, and they were starting to come out with all of these different ailments that cannabis actually helps with, and a lot of them she had, and I started to wonder, I wonder if that would have healed her or helped her in some way, extended her life in some way, if she was able to use these to actually heal herself. That was a huge part of the motivation for me as to why I wanted to delve more into the industry. I wanted to learn how to heal other people like her, and how do I heal myself as I age. So that really was a big part of the impetus. And then my daughter also left for college. And I was still married to my husband at the time. So I was experiencing the whole empty nest experience, because she was my only child. And I realized that I was a lesbian. I fell in love with a good friend of mine. And at first I was, I told my husband about it, and we were trying to work through it as best as we can and save the marriage, because we'd been married for close to 20 years by then. But I just had to be honest about who I was, really. And that was, what I decided to do. And we talked about it, and we decided to get divorced. And after that, a little bit before that, I met the lady that I ended up being a partner with and going out to Denver, Colorado with together. So she and I went together to Denver, Colorado. We got an RV, and I just, pretty much sold everything I had here in New York, and we just drove cross country and camped all the way, and, made it all the way to Denver, Colorado. It was quite exciting. We had quite a party when we actually got to Colorado. It's like, yay, we're at a place where it's legal. Let's light up. was fun.
So like that's a huge shift, right?
Yes.
So and then you just sort of threw it out there, this line, and then I realized I was a lesbian, and then it's like, pardon? Like that's not something you just sort of realize, is it? Like,
right. For me, that's how it felt. I don't know for other people. And I've been hearing more and more stories and hearing that this is more common. I heard even on Sex and the City, there's a new character who's had this similar story. So I was like, wow, this is like a thing. Okay. I just did not. I was always androgynous. And I've always had a very masculine side to myself and character, but I never emphasized that. I always tried to be as feminine as possible. So I've always known myself to be androgynous and have a very masculine energy to myself, but I wasn't aware of my attraction to women. I didn't notice that until very late in my life. And once I did know, I was uncontrollable. Like I couldn't hide it. It was weird. It was very strange to me. I don't know how else to explain it. And it's just, it's surprising to anyone to hear it. I was surprised. It took me a long time to accept it and acknowledge it, because it was a very strange experience for me. It just felt like it came from out of nowhere.
I think that's great. I think it's, I think that process of, I'm a big one for listen to the whispers. Yes. Right. There's something about the desire that calls you. And for me, it was a path of, service overlaid with psychology overlaid, or on top of it, around it, etc. Like that was the whisper for me. For you, it was like, well, it must be law. Until it became like, well, it must be women. Right. Like, okay. Like, and here's the key to this. And it doesn't matter if it's sexuality. It doesn't matter. I mean, to me, like, if it's a calling for a career path or switch in careers, or a lot of my audience knows about my desire for a very particular kind of luggage. And it was like, I can't explain why. I just must. Yeah. And it's like, that's the stuff. And when you start to pay attention to that, like the luggage I got, for example, is like artwork to me. It makes me happy every time I travel with it. People comment on it. It is, I still can't explain it other than it must be mine. Right. So, and I think the same is true for a career path if you listen to it. And I think the same is true for, for identity. Right. Yes. Like, and so it's like, I just love the line. You see me writing. So if I'm looking down, it's because I'm writing. And it's like, and then I realized I was a lesbian. It's like, that is so good. It's like, just sort of like, and then I realized this isn't the tea I ordered. It's like, that's fantastic. It's really good. So
yes, absolutely.
So, obviously that takes a little discussion with a husband. Obviously that takes a little discussion with a daughter who's going off to college at that point.
Right.
And obviously that takes a little discussion with yourself as you hook up with, connect with, and assume commit to, at least for a short time, a new partner.
Right.
And combine that with, oh yeah, I've given up law and I decided to go to Denver to open a lounge. Awesome. So this is where it gets interesting and like confounding, and somehow you found your way. So at this point, like, this allows us to come from 2013 to present. That's only 9 years. Right. There's a lot that happened in those 9 years. You came from Colorado, which was exploring with, is cannabis legal? Is it not?
Right.
Is it medical only? Is it recreational? Right. So you came from there to back to New York, where you're now attached to an amazing law group.
Yes.
Right. Warren Law is fantastic. Like, I mean, just a shout out to Chris Warren, because
Yes.
he's an awesome human, right?
He
It's
is. He
like,
is.
yeah. So just,
Chris is awesome and a wonderful attorney.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, the whole group, like I've met, I don't know how many of the attorneys at Warren Law, and they're like, every single one of them is smart.
Yep.
They're
Yep.
humane.
Yep.
They're humane.
Yeah.
And they are tenacious as heck. Like,
yes.
and
Yes.
like they won't let go.
No,
Which is what you want in an attorney.
An attorney.
All right. So
no, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that I've been at a few firms, as I've mentioned, and that's one of the things that really distinguishes this place for me, is that there is a real deep caring for clients and taking their work very seriously. It's really a great place to be an entrepreneur as an attorney, and just to help people, because they really focus on that and just knowing the law and being excellent.
It's really funny, because not being an attorney, you like as a consumer, right? Just as somebody just out in the world, I assume attorneys know the law. I assume they want to be excellent. And my experience is that's not always the case, which is why, like, meeting Chris Warren and so many other of the attorneys at Warren Law, it's like every single one of them. So, and it's one of the reasons, like, when I met you, I'm like, oh my gosh, here's this human that happens to be an excellent attorney, that happens to have moved from a certain part of law into now cannabis as a specialization. So talk about the last 9 years, like, ta-da, you came out. Okay. and then you found your way back to law, like from the lounge. So tie up those pieces for me, because and for the audience, right? So yeah.
I mean, it was I won't say backbreaking, but it was a really tough experience for me, because I've always been in banking and finance, to the extent that before I was an attorney, I would be a teller and an investigator. So I've done a lot of finance and banking work, and then I became an attorney. So I didn't really have experience being an entrepreneur as such. And it was there a lot of things to pull together. And I feel like the main issue for us at the time was really the leasing issue on the space that I was at. I wish I had the funds to just purchase the space as opposed to leasing. And there was a lot of things that kind of on just the physical side of the space that just didn't go very well. And I ended up having a lot of issues with my partner that I was with at the time as well. So things just kind of fell apart for me at the end of being out there in Denver. But at the same time, it didn't fall apart. It fell together, because I ended up learning so much about, running the business, learning about cannabis from seed to sale, every aspect of it. I got to know so many people who were new in the industry. I mean, it was just starting. So, and there weren't a lot of places in Denver or in the world at that time where they were actually, it was legal cannabis and people could come and gather. So I ended up meeting people from all over the world, and entrepreneurs from all different walks of life. So I really was happy to have the experience in the end. And now I see how incredibly valuable it is to me. Like, I would not be anywhere close to the attorney I am today if that didn't happen to me.
So I want to pause, because I look for leadership lessons along the way, and this is a point that so many people miss, right? That you turned an adversarial condition into an opportunity to learn. Right. So here's this, like, you wanted to have a business. Then there were issues with a partner. There was issues with the real estate itself. There were issues with the contracts. But certainly you weren't alone, but certainly, dare you share that? Dare you explore? And you're like, I need to learn everything about this business. And a lot of people would step back and wither and take it as a sign that maybe they just weren't meant to do this. Right. And you took it as a sign of, maybe I just don't know enough about this. And that's the leadership lesson. And I want to point that out, that when you are faced with obstacles, that's like, you just get to choose the meaning you give to those obstacles. Right. And you could take it as a sign, yeah, you weren't meant to do this, or you could take it as a sign, wow, maybe there's more to learn.
Right. Yes.
And because, Morrison, because you stepped in, you went, there is more to learn right here. And then there's more to learn right here. And then there's more to learn and more to learn and more to learn. And you became, as a result of the expanded circle that you have, you became one of the top experts.
Yes.
And it's like, it's great. And just so you know, I was sort of watching for your response when I called you a top expert, and you're like, yes. It's like, you own that because of your experience. You own your expertise, right?
So yes. I paid for it. I've sacrificed for this. So yes, and I know it. I do know it.
Right. So a lot of people would go, yeah, there's still a lot to learn. It's like, no, you know what? I dove in deep.
Yes.
I did the work so other people don't have to.
Right.
I'm in it. I know my stuff. It's like, that's awesome.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what you say about like just listening to the whisper resonates so incredibly for me. I was listening to one of your earlier podcasts on the same thing, and I was just like, wow, this really speaks to me. Because for so much of my life, as I told you, like I was always told, you should be an attorney, you should be an attorney. And I always felt like something was missing though within myself. And I didn't really know exactly what I was supposed to do.
That's it.
And even though I was going through life and I had everything, like I was doing extremely well, more than I was making so much more money than I ever thought was possible. I was just like, wow, I can't believe it. And I had a wonderful family. I was married. Everything was going so well for me, but yet something inside of me was just like, something was just missing and I couldn't understand what it was. But once I opened up to my attraction to women and my lesbianism, it started out as a whisper until it was just like knocking me over the head. It's like, this is what's going on with you. It took me a while to accept that about myself. But once I accepted it, I just kind of moved forward with it. And I feel the same thing with cannabis and exploring that world. It was a huge jump for me to, leave my very stable profession and run into this new industry. But something told me inside, in my heart, that this is what I need to do. And I can say with respect to both of those things, it was, and with having my daughter too, I'll put that, it's the same thing. It was just this thing within me that was very deeply like, this is what you need to do. And even though there's all of these obstacles, as you mentioned, in the external world, and it may not seem like a really smart decision to most people looking on the outside. Within, it felt right, and there was like no doubt within me, like, this is the industry you need to know. This is what you need to be in. So that's kind of why I jumped in.
It is so huge. It is so it's affirming. Like when you do, and I see it over and over and over and over and over again. It's why I do the Exponential Success Summit is how do you get out of your own way so you actually can listen to the whispers? Because once you align with that, you are living in your purpose. So many people are like, I don't know what my purpose in life is. The answer is yes, you do.
Right.
You do, if you would like quiet everything else and just listen.
Right.
It's like, yeah, but it can't be that. It's like, yeah, but it could be.
Right.
What if it is? Like, what if that's the thing?
That's what it is. It's scary. It can be very scary. And I was very scared.
It's scary because there's a lot of supposed to's out there. There's the external supposed to's.
Right.
And what happens is when people listen to those whispers, they actually do step into their power. They do, like, my first book, Choosing Your Power. It's about how do you actually declare who you are? It's like,
right.
Well, I choose to be this ? And it's like, there's nobody else to give you approval but you.
Right.
And once you learn that, and once you accept that, and once you step into that, all the magic happens. Right. So, here's the proof.
Yes.
It's a question. You have zero regrets about pursuing multiple non-traditional paths, correct?
Yes.
Zero, right? Zero regrets.
Zero regrets. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you had to.
I
right?
had to.
Yeah.
I had to. Yeah.
Love it.
I had no choice. I had no choice. Absolutely. And I agree with you 100%. It took me a while as well to come to that conclusion that I'm the one who has to judge myself. And when you said that, I was brought, the image of, I don't know if you've seen that, like the Day of Judgment in the Egyptian tradition, where you have the goddess Maya like holding the scales, and it's the feather against the heart. And it took me a while looking at that. I was like, what is that about? Like at the Day of Judgment on the last day, where really, it's the feather against the heart, and it's your own heart against the feather. Is it light? How are you judging yourself? And I feel like that's really true. And it takes a while to get to that acceptance of self.
Well, and right. So depending on how you interpret certain sentences in certain readings, we are in heaven. We are creating it every day. And so how on earth are we creating that heaven for ourselves? And how authentically are we living? How true and in integrity and in alignment are we living? Because that's what creates this, like, when you do that, it's no longer work.
Right.
So when you think about, every day, well, I've got this client, or I've got that person, or I've got this thing that I need to, fight for, it's like, that's not work. Right. That's the right thing to do.
Yeah, so. Exactly. That's exactly how my life has completely transformed. And, and that's another reason why I'm so grateful and happy to be here at Warren Law Group, because I get to choose and work with clients that I really care about and I'm pursuing justice for, and it's exciting, and I do look forward to each day, and I look forward to doing the work that I do, and it's fun for me, So I think that's really magical.
That is magical.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes.
All right. So what's next for you in terms of, like your life, your relationships, your expanded duties, whether that's at Warren Law or beyond, like your hobbies? What are you up to? What's next for you as an ever expanding human?
Just really working more in the cannabis industry. I have quite a few issues with the regulations that have been put in place. I think they're very extensive, and I intend to be very active in the industry, just making sure that they're really fair and helpful to people who have been most impacted by the prohibition up until now. And I wish to just do more on that level and working more with entrepreneurs, as I have been. I mean, we've been doing some capital raises and providing financing, helping people with their applications to start dispensaries and grows and, sanctuaries, lounges out here. So I want to continue to do work in that area, and also doing more with tribes and, people who have indigenous culture, making sure that their rights are protected as well. And the people who are using it for medicine, So there are so many different areas to pursue and to continue to pursue. And that's really what's on the horizon primarily for me. I also would like, from all of this, there has been more of an issue, like a schism, I would say, with myself and my daughter. And I really want to focus on us and, developing more of a relationship with her. We're mending it more and more, but, we had a lot of falling out. So I want to make sure that is, I just focus on that.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yes, and I'm not dating anybody right now. I don't intend to. I'm not looking. I just kind of want to focus on, my daughter, what I have, my family and friends, and working hard. So that's really what I have on the horizon right now.
That's really great. Is there? I love this. I just this is a natural kind of place to pause for us. Is there anything that you were thinking I would ask, or that you were hoping I would ask, or that you would like to share that, like, I didn't guide you in this way, and there's this one thing you were hoping to be able to share?
I really appreciated what you were saying about in one of your prior podcasts about looking at what we have to, not as what we, looking at work is not what we have to do, but what we get to do, and seeing it as more and more of an opportunity. And I feel that is so true for me, particularly now, because I'm so incredibly busy, and I get up every day thinking I have to do this, but at the same time it's joyful. And when I'm actually doing it, I'm like, I really love this, so it's true. There's like so much, joy that comes out of it. And I'm happy that I get to do the work that I do. In terms of
when you live in gratitude, right? So I start my day with, I start my day with thank you.
Yes.
And then instead of looking at my calendar going, oh my gosh, what's the day hold? It's like, all right, I'm in service today.
Yeah.
What do I get to do? Who do I get to lift? How many lives do I get to change or serve today?
Yes.
And it makes everything kind of align very differently.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
I'm the one that put those things on my calendar.
Right. Exactly. It's true. It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. So I love that. And I want to reinforce that message. I also am very much about remembering that marijuana, cannabis is also a healing plant and a spiritual plant. Before, we just think of it as being purely recreational. It has many facets to it. And as we go through to this brave new world that we're entering, I just would like for that to always be kept on everyone's mind. And another big issue for me is just, children. As I've gone through this whole experience, particularly of losing my mother, spending time, I also recently, unfortunately, lost an adult niece of mine out in Canada. So that's part of my journey for over the last 9 years, is losing two people very close to me. And I did a great deal of traveling during that period, spent a lot of time up in the mountains, just being remote, off the grid. It was a wonderful experience, and I really got to get to know myself on a really deep level. But from losing those people and spending time in Canada, I got to be a lot closer to my sister and brother and their children and their kids out there. So I spent a lot of time with the young people, and it became more and more apparent to me and obvious to me that it's all the future is the children. Like, I'm going to go one day, and we're all going to go one day, and it's just about the kids, and that was a huge lesson for me. I know it's something we talk about all the time and we say it all the time, but it's real. Like, there's just really nothing else but the kids. The kids are
so there's, right, we look at the kids, and pretty soon the kids are adults, and it's the next generation of kids. So the question is, what legacy can I as an individual, right? And this is the message to each of our audience members as you're listening to this, as you're watching this, what legacy do you wish to leave for not the next generation, but the generation after that and after that? Like the ripples that you make now will affect generations to come.
Right.
How deliberate can you be? How much positivity can you plant right now, right? That's going to affect positively the generations to come, because it is, there are people that throw up their hands and they go, well, it's about the children, and we'll leave it to them to sort it out. And it's like, well, so I sort of take that back, and it's like, no, it's about me paving the way for our children to make decisions that then allow them to make their impact, that allow future generations to make their decisions to make future impact. So I wanted to back that up a little bit, Morrison, because when it's like, yes, it's true, it's about the children, it's about us creating the conditions for our children to live in a better space. And what decisions are we making to allow that to happen?
Wow. I felt goosebumps while you were talking.
Thank you. That's awesome. So good to have you here.
Yes, thank you.
I'll be back in New York. I'll be able to give you a squeeze live and in person pretty soon. So
yes,
that's good. Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
it. So
Thank you.
if people want to reach you, is
Yeah.
there like, are you comfortable sharing an email address?
Sure.
Okay.
You can reach me at Morrison, Morrison, at warren.law, WARREN.law.
All right. And that will be in
Right.
the show notes as well. Morrison at warren.law.
Yes.
Okay. And as long as we're doing this, I would invite each of our listeners and you to check out exponentialsuccesssummit.com. All right. Thank you. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. This is One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. My guest today was Morrison with Warren Law, and I am Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Pernell, the Exponential Success Coach. We'll see you here next time.
All right. Take care. Peace.